Hello, everyone. Before I begin today's discussion or rant or whatever you'd like to call it, I've begun rebranding my channel from Arctic Wolf Actual to American Patriot. I'm also on Facebook under the same name, and I will post a link to that on my channel for anyone who would like to follow on Facebook. I look forward to posting more police interaction videos for you guys. However, since I don't go out looking for interactions with officers and I wait for them to target me, it does make it difficult to get the opportunities to record these interactions. So I will be working on creating content for the sake of awareness and advocating for our constitutional rights and discussing laws and whatever else I can between these police interaction videos. There are a couple of things that I would like to go over today. First is going to be something I find really important. Normally, I won't be putting comments in the spotlight, but this one I feel should be addressed. It was posted by Southwest Ohio Emergency Videos, and it was regarding my criticism of unmarked police cars that are used by my local police department. And it states, "Why do you care? They could just be sitting there waiting to be outfitted for all you know. Mind your own business." In that video, I did show that we do have unmarked vehicles. So whether these two new vehicles are waiting to be equipped or not, they are running unmarked vehicles, as was shown in the video. The issue people, I think, are having isn't the fact that there's unmarked vehicles. I think it's that they're looking for a reason to be unhappy with content. And it's largely due to the oppressive nature of the government. People are afraid to criticize the government, afraid to hold the government accountable, which is one more sign in how our constitutional rights are steadily declining. We have a right to criticize the government. We have a right to protest. We have a right to petition for a redress of grievances. Um, and from what I'm seeing in many comments, people, I don't know if they're not understanding it or they're just apathetic toward it. To this comment, I replied, "That is my business. They're servants. Why do servants need to hide in plain sight unless they're doing the wrong thing? The state this country is in is largely due to that same mindset. If you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem." See, when someone takes a position as a public servant, whether they're police, politicians, judges, even the county clerks and secretaries of state, everything you do involving your job becomes the public's business. Who in their right mind would tell their boss to mind your own business when your boss is addressing something job related? Taxpayers are the employers of public servants, and holding them accountable is our job. It's everyone's job. What they do, right or wrong, is public business and will always be public business. We need to hold them accountable. We need to do better. The more apathetic we are as a whole, the worse our country is getting. And we've seen that in recent history. There's been a lot of apathy and a very steady decline in the state of our nation. Another issue I have that I want to address today is qualified immunity. Many supporters of qualified immunity will say things like, "Without qualified immunity, how can police do their jobs?" Or, "Without qualified immunity, police can't do their job because they're going to fear the consequences." Most people making these arguments will also say, if you aren't doing anything wrong, you have no reason to fear the police. Well, that same logic applies to the police. If you aren't doing anything wrong as an officer, you don't need to fear the consequences when you do your job. Jonah Schwartz, a professor of law at UCLA, and Lenny Keston, a partner lawyer in Boston, who has represented hundreds of police officers in civil rights cases, did an interview with Lisa Desjardins from PBS News. Now, this article is dated August 18th, 2021, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be posting the link to this article in the video description, as I highly recommend reading it in its entirety, and I'm only addressing a few issues in this video. During this interview, Jonah Schwartz stated, qualified immunity protects law enforcement officers and other government officials even when they have violated the Constitution, so long as there's not a prior court decision with virtually identical facts. So, if the facts aren't identical, they may not have done the wrong thing. They didn't know. She continues to say that means people who have had their rights violated, sometimes in egregious ways, by law enforcement have no basis for relief for the harms that were caused to them. Qualified immunity is also dramatically increases the cost and burdens to the plaintiffs in bringing these cases. It focuses the courts on whether there's a prior court decision that holds the law unconstitutional, as opposed to what actually happened in the case. And there's a variety of ways in which qualified immunity makes it more difficult for law enforcement to understand that what they're doing or what they're allowed to do. Lenny Keston replied, it's important that police officers are apprised of the rules before they break them. It's easy to say that they violate the Constitution. All the Constitution says, the contract has to be reasonable. It doesn't lay out any rules. It's court's decisions that lay out the rules. So the officers know what is and is not constitutional. When Lisa Desjardins asked, but Lenny, how do you respond to the idea that some say giving this immunity to police officers takes away accountability? Why should police officers have immunity ever in a court of law from what they've done? Lenny replied by stating, it's people arguing with the name. They think it's an immunity. It's not. It is an immunity. They think of it this way. All that qualified immunity does is say if the police officer has no way of knowing that what he or she is doing violated the Constitution, they can't be held liable for that action. It's an issue of fairness to the police. That fairness he speaks of is not afforded to private citizens. Whether or not a citizen committed a crime or whatever happened that the police are interacting with them for, and if they did commit a crime, knowingly or unknowingly, the courts and the police refuse to accept that as a defense. They simply argue that the individual should have known better. So why is it that our public servants are given fairness, which I would say isn't even fairness, it's special treatment when they do the wrong thing, but when a private citizen, out of ignorance, may have done something wrong, that's not okay. They're not given that fairness. That's where I see the problem here. Largely, well, a large part of the problem. There's much more issues than just that. I completely intend sarcasm when I use the word crime, as many things are crimes that should not be considered crimes. For example, I live in the state of Michigan, and in Michigan we have CPL laws. So a CPL law requires a private citizen to purchase a concealed pistol license, CPL, from the state. It costs $115, and they last approximately 4 years. That $115 does not include the mandatory course that the state orders you to pay for and attend for 8 hours prior to asking them for permission to have your rights. These laws effectively convert a right into a privilege. Police enforce these laws, and failure to comply will oftentimes catch you with a felony. From there, the state brands you a criminal and strips you further of your constitutional rights. The Supreme Court has ruled in the following cases, and in the case of Murdoch versus Penn, it was ruled that no state shall convert a liberty into a privilege, license it, and attach a fee to it. In the case of Shuttlesworth versus Birmingham, it was ruled that if the state converts a liberty into a privilege, the citizen can engage in the right with impunity. Now, despite these two court case rulings from the Supreme Court, if you do not buy your Second Amendment rights from the state of Michigan and you choose to engage in that right, regardless of what the Supreme Court ruled, you will still, in most cases, catch a felony. Um, which just goes to show that the Supreme Court rulings on things oftentimes do not matter when it comes to police interaction, um, as well as state law. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and all of them, whether it's district courts or the Supreme Court or just a beat cop off the street, they've all sworn an oath to the Constitution to uphold it. And in such cases where you're being charged with a felony for adhering to the Constitution over an unconstitutional state law, especially when the Supreme Court ruled that them converting your right into a privilege is nullified, you'll still catch charges. And it just goes to show you that you can't rely on the courts, you can't trust the police. Um, and the best thing you can do is try to avoid them altogether. And I think that with the target that the system, I'll use the term system, which is including the courts and law enforcement, the target they put on the backs of citizens, I don't think they should be immune from that target. You know, if they're going to target us and strip us of our rights, they should be held to a much higher standard. Therefore, they can't plead ignorance and be immune from consequences when they violate the law, which we'll touch on that more in a little bit here. A few more Supreme Court rulings that I'd like to address. In the case of the State versus Robinson, it was ruled that an illegal arrest is an assault and battery. The person so attempted to be restrained of his liberty has the same right to use force in defending himself as he would in repelling any other assault and battery. Furthermore, in the case of the State versus Mobley, it was ruled each person has the right to resist an unlawful arrest. In such a case, the person attempting the arrest stands in the position of a wrongdoer and may be resisted by the use of force, as in self-defense. In the case of Adams versus the state, it was ruled one may come to the aid of another being unlawfully arrested, just as he may where one is being assaulted, molested, raped, or kidnapped. Thus, it is not an offense to liberate one from the unlawful custody of an officer, even though he may have submitted to such custody without resistance. And all of that is going to bring us to the final court case that I would like to address here. This is the case of Owen versus Independence, and it was ruled that officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right from liability, for they are deemed to know the law. It should be noted that an officer of the court is defined as any person who has an obligation to promote justice and uphold the law, including judges, clerks, court personnel, police officers, and attorney who must be truthful in court and obey court rules. This definition is being pulled from Nolo's Plain English Law Dictionary. Therefore, according to the Supreme Court and the definition of an officer of the court, qualified immunity is illegal. So why are we having the debate over whether qualified immunity should be a thing or not when the Supreme Court says that violating a constitutional right grants you no immunity and you can't plead ignorance? Any officer who chooses to enforce such laws that violate the Constitution, their oath is to defend the Constitution, which is the supreme law. How can you claim ignorance when your job is to uphold the very document you violated. You're law enforcement, but if you don't know the law and that's why you're ignorant to I did any wrong, you shouldn't be in that position. You can't be law enforcement and not know the laws that you're enforcing. Ignorance isn't an excuse, and the officers need to do better and the courts need to do better. We the people are owed much better than what we're getting. They should be subject to the consequences whether or not they knew what they did was a violation. And if they don't know, once again, why do they have that badge? They should be surrendering their badge. Ignorance is not a valid excuse when it comes to violating the Constitution and violating people's constitutionally protected rights. That's all I have for today. I look forward to creating more videos and discussing some more stuff with you guys. I have a email up on my Facebook page. You can email me there. You can send me messages, direct messages through Facebook at American Patriot. Once again, I will be posting the link to that Facebook profile on my channel here. And I look forward to interacting with you guys more. Have a good day. Bye.